Hello and welcome back to the Dear Prudence show, where I'm joined today by my wife, Grace Lavery, who's about to sneeze. So I'm going to give her some cover by showing you our new dog. This is Gogo. He's very small. He's not normally allowed on this couch. I'm your host, Dear Prudence, also known as Daniel M. Lavery. With me in the studio this week is Gogo, the very small dog, as well as Grace Lavery, an associate professor at UC Berkeley and the author of the upcoming memoir, Please Miss. She's also married to me, which I think is terrific. Grace, welcome back to the show.
Thank you. It's so great to be here.
You've been here before.
Yes,
This
is my living room.
I meant the show, but yes, this is also our living room that we share.
Yes, I didn't mean to claim that it wasn't also yours.
Thank you. I really appreciate that. See, that's just one of the many ways in which we make space for one another.
Yeah.
Both physical space and emotional space, and I really value that. You'll notice I'm dressed tonight like the fisherman from I Know What You Did Last Summer. That's an accident. I just got this shirt a few days ago, and I really, really like it. Let's answer some questions.
And I apologize, everyone. I've been having an allergic reaction today, so I just wanted you to know that's why my voice sounds a little strange.
And you may sneeze again.
And I may sneeze. I didn't just sneeze. It was very frustrating.
Very sorry.
No, don't be sorry.
It's a serious problem. Let's start with a more serious problem. The subject of this first letter is age gap. Dear Prudence, I became a father at 15 and then again at 20. It was a rough road. And I will admit I wasn't present in my children's lives until my oldest was in middle school, but I did step up. I went to school meetings, dance recitals, taught my kids how to drive, cook a good meal, and throw a punch. I worked 3 jobs so my kids could go to college without much debt. I thought their mother and I did pretty good for a pair of teens from the wrong side of the tracks. All 3 of our kids graduated and got themselves solid careers. I turn 45 soon, and I'm dating a colleague who is 31. She is fun, smart, and sexy. I love her. My daughter turns 30 this summer. I know all the jokes about middle-aged guys dating women young enough to be their daughters, but it's not usually about guys who become parents at 15. And it does fit between the half your age plus 7 rule. My sons have met my girlfriend, they like her. My daughter's also met her, but doesn't know my girlfriend's exact age. Her marriage fell apart last year because her husband was, quote, dating an 18-year-old intern at his company. She's understandably bitter about it and makes lots of comments about dirty old men and cradle robbers. My concern is she will react irrationally once she finds out. Her brother is dating a 21-year-old, and my daughter makes cracks about him picking his dates up from daycare. They're both in the same master's program, and they fought pretty badly over it. I don't want to press on barely healed wounds, but I'm happy. My ex never married, and I never introduced any of my past girlfriends to my kids. I know it's a little early to propose, but I want to spend my life with this woman. She doesn't want children either, just someone to explore the world with. What do I do?
Chill out. So this is one of those questions where I'm like, I can see that you think there's a problem here. But I don't see what it is. You are a consenting adult. A 31-year-old is a consenting adult. Your daughter is allowed to have feelings about your sexual tastes. You do not require your daughter's sign off on your sexual tastes. That seems fine. I wouldn't describe your daughter's responses to her brother as traumatic or requiring some particular kind of sensitivity. It all just seems fine to me.
Yeah, maybe not fine, but I would certainly put it under the category of necessary or acceptable conflict.
Yeah.
My sort of read of this letter was a kind of fear of like, because I wasn't present in my kids' life until they were in middle school, if they get mad at me now for something that reminds them of ways that they have been hurt in their own lives, will I have a leg to stand on? Will I be able to say, I'm sorry that this hurts you, but I'm happy and that's just how it is? Or will I feel like that'll be an opportunity for them to say, and you weren't around until I was 12, and I'll feel like, you're right, you've got me there, I owe you something. I feel like that's part of why he included that information here.
That seems right. But again, I just don't think he does owe that to the kids. He may owe other things. He may owe other kinds of attention, but I don't think it's a healthy idea to give your kids veto power over your dating life.
Yeah, and I also, for whatever it's worth, letter writer, I have no idea where the half your age plus 7 rule comes from.
Yeah.
It seems weird to me. She's 31, you're 45. I'm just not worried. I can understand your daughter's real pain from finding out that her husband was cheating on her, and especially given that he was cheating on her with an 18-year-old who worked for him. That's pretty fucked up. That's also not your situation. I would encourage you not to call your daughter irrational, just because usually if you call someone that, they get pretty mad and defensive.
Yeah.
But if she wants to try to compare those two situations, she's not right. They're not the same. And the fact that she has been hurt by someone else is sad. And of course, as her dad, you might care about it, but you can't fix that by dating a third. Like, what would you say? Like, would it be okay if I dated a 39-year-old? Would that make you feel better? I think the thing to do here is just tell your daughter how old your girlfriend is.
Yeah.
If she gets mad, say, I'm sorry to hear that. I love her and I'm happy. And then if at some point there's an opportunity to have another conversation where she says, I'm still mad, even though you did eventually step up, that you weren't there when I was younger. And you can maybe talk about that. Or if she says, I felt kind of abandoned after my husband cheated on me, and I wished that more of you had stepped up in different ways, you can listen to that. But you're not going to be able to, short of dumping your girlfriend to placate your daughter, which you shouldn't do. I don't think you should act as if you're doing something wrong just because you think your daughter might get angry with you.
Yeah, no, I think we just sort of agree. Like, I think in general, a good standard for age stuff is this person meaningfully capable of consenting and participating enthusiastically? And if the answer is yes, you're fine.
That's great. You can go ahead and sneeze all you want.
I wish that I could. It's going to be a factor this evening, is that I'm going to be on the precipice of sneezing quite a lot. It's going to be annoying for both of us, Danny.
I don't know that it's going to be annoying. I think it's going to bring an exciting energy to some of the
I see.
answers.
It's going to have like it's cliffhanger.
Yeah, just like do or die, make a decision.
Going to sneeze.
Right or wrong,
Yeah.
What do we think? Yeah, so I think tell your daughter how old your girlfriend is. You don't have to like say, I have something to tell you. Like, it's time you knew. Just, she's met your girlfriend, she likes her. Pepper into a conversation the fact that she's 31. If your daughter says something like 31, that's like being 18 or an intern, again, you can like love her and care about her pain and also say like, that's not true.
Yeah.
That's it. I think sometimes it's hard when you think somebody I know is often angry or hurt and they have good reason to be because they've been...
Or at least it makes sense with experiences they've had.
Yeah, but then it kind of feels like...
Whenever needs a reason to be upset with her.
Yeah, then it can kind of start to feel like it's you're allowed to be always hurt and angry and have the moral high ground. And the best thing I can come up with is like being halfway apologetic or sort of guilty. And again, you don't need to do that here.
Yeah. Where does half your age plus 7 come from? Do you remember the first time you heard it?
I assume it comes from straight people.
Sure, yeah.
But I have no idea who did that math or why it felt meaningful or important. Yeah, it feels like somebody who wants like a mathematical rule rather than to take into account, does this person work for me?
Yeah.
Do they,
Does it strike you as a good rule of thumb or no? Just like, not really. I don't think it does me, really.
It makes no sense to me as a rule.
Yeah.
Plenty of rules about age and dating make sense to me, or rather principles. Half your age plus 7 does not.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It seems like a math puzzle, doesn't it? It just seems like, divide by 3, add the numbers together.
Yeah.
Multiply by 8.
You're in the clear.
Exactly, yeah.
And it's a little bit like, sometimes people will talk about like, oh, you're dating somebody younger. Well, 20 years ago, you would have been in college and they would have been a baby, as if that's some great gotcha. Like, had you been dating at the time, you'd be really committing a crime.
Oh,
it's
right,
just like,
yeah.
Yeah, but that's not happening.
Right.
That didn't happen. Right. I don't know why people seem to think that's the gotcha that they often think it is. I'm being told we're out of time, so good luck. I'm going to read our second letter.
Thank you. Danny's doing the reading because of my nose. I just wanted to explain that.
And I just wanted to make it clear that it's not because I enjoy speaking over women. It's just because she's got the sniffles and I'm trying to be helpful. As is Go-Go.
Feel free to sleep over me. Sleep over me. Wait, speak over me.
I love you. Subject is, where do friends come from? Dear Prudence, since college, I have steadily become more and more friendless. I'm not great at keeping in touch with old friends. Now in my mid-30s with a husband and a 2-year-old in the middle of a pandemic, I've realized I have no local friends. I'm friendly with my coworkers during the day, but that's about it. I don't need a lot of social interaction, but the isolation of new motherhood plus COVID has really highlighted how nice it would be to have a few close friends. people I could have coffee with, or couples to invite to dinner, regular people stuff. I got my vaccine and COVID rates in my area are low, so the opportunity to put myself out there again seems like it's on the horizon. But I don't know how to make friends anymore. Where do I even look? I'm actually a friendly and fun person. I just don't know how to make these relationships happen anymore.
Ah, that's so sad.
I know, I really felt for this letter writer, and I wanted to try to think of a way to contextualize this that didn't feel like I was being dismissive or blaming them.
Oh yeah, I don't blame them at all.
What I mean is, you know, you got married and you had a kid,
Yeah.
and those are choices that tend to prioritize a certain type of
Sure, yeah. I guess that's
insularity, a family, a nuclear family unit. And that's not to say like you chose to drive your friends away, and so that's just what happened. But I think it's a common problem for new parents and for people in many marriages.
I mean, I think COVID makes it so much harder.
Absolutely.
And deprives people of any number of resources that they would have under usual circumstances, including support groups for young parents, which seems to me to be a good place to start, by the way, because you may very well find that you're experiencing a great deal of demand on your time as a result of your new motherhood, on which congratulations. And it may be that looking for other young parents in your area through a support group would be a good place to meet. I know that a lot of the young parents that I'm close with have made friends that way, and it seems kind of interesting because often you meet people in those kinds of environments who aren't the sort of people you've historically chosen as your friends. I mean, I know that I have two friends in the neighborhood who both of whom have young children and are in separate sort of pod circles with different families. And those relationships are interesting. I mean, super interesting under the constrictions of the last year. There's been some sort of interesting tension, a lot of love, a lot of necessity, a lot of antagonism, a lot of frustration, as you can imagine. But that's what friendship is, I guess. When you talk about local parenting groups and kind of making community in that way, it's not you're not expecting that you're always going to be happy and joyful and cheerful. Yeah. Friendship is very often about getting kind of pissed with people.
Yeah, and
I mean, whatever. That's not not them necessarily, but I just we're
going to start with coffee.
Start with coffee and then have a fight.
Yeah. And I think too, I mostly just wanted to bring that up, not to say like you chose to deprioritize friendship and now you're reaping what you've sown. Just I think this is a really common problem.
Yeah.
And so I think likely there were probably a lot of other new parents quite close to you who are running up against the same problem.
I would imagine so.
And so, part of what I think the easiest thing to do would be, I mean, don't go on Mumsnet or anything, but to look for any kind of exchange where people are trading tips about like, I don't know what you do with a 2-year-old. Trading tips on what to do with a 2-year-old.
I believe there are parts of Mumsnet that are quite safe.
Is it only in the UK though?
Probably. Yeah. I don't know. That might be true.
I think the only two things in this, Faith, you have children. Thank you. My producer, Faith, is saying local online parenting groups. The kid is a great excuse to reach out to other parents and start socializing with playdates. Thank you, Faith. I appreciate that lived experience.
Faith is in a better spot than me, because that's kind of what I was trying to communicate, but that's just so much more prettily put.
Yeah. And the only other things that I would add, you say you're not great at keeping in touch with old friends. That's fine, and I get that they may be scattered far and wide, and they might not have the same time that somebody else in your neighborhood might. But just because you're not great at it doesn't mean you can't ever do it. So if part of you felt like, I need to write off those friendships and start afresh with people I'm sure I'll never repeat those patterns with, maybe in addition to seeking out new people, give some of those old friends a call. See how they're doing. Say, I miss you. I'm not great at keeping up, but I miss you.
Yeah, that's a really good point, I think. Saying I'm not good at this is often a way of just sort of saying, it will be strange or like potentially awkward for me to reach out to this person out of the blue. Yeah. But if you can just overcome that awkwardness for a moment and just say like, hey, how's life? Do you remember that time we did something?
Yeah.
That's what friendship sounds like. Hey, how's life? Remember that time we did something?
Do you want to fight?
Yeah.
I think the last thing that I'll add is, and again, I don't want to read too much into this, but you do say that there's the isolation of new motherhood. And I hope your husband is doing his best. Often there's a little room for improvement on top of one's best. Even if all you're letting him know is that like you feel pretty isolated, you don't need him to fix this or manage this problem for you, but just any opportunities that he might have to lift some of the work from you or lift some of the isolation or encourage you to take a walk and try to meet other people. If nothing else, just having a partner who knows a problem that you have can make you feel a little bit less alone. I realize you've probably seen plenty of him in the last year, and you're like, I don't need to get any closer to this man. I need to meet a lady I don't live with and have coffee, which would totally make sense.
Yeah.
So that's that for that one. Let's move on. The subject of this next letter is Never Said No. Dear Prudence, I worked at a high school in the early 2000s when I was in my mid-20s. One of my students, Steve, became very attached to me. He was perceived as a troubled, angry kid and had a bad reputation among the staff, but he trusted me. Eventually, his feelings for me started to seem romantic. He once gave me a birthday card with a love poem in it. He left before I opened it and got into an argument with security on the way out. The whole thing made me extremely uncomfortable. I stopped working at the school in 2006. He would email sometimes to ask me how I was, and I'd answer that I was fine and ask how he was doing. Then he wouldn't answer. As the years went by, he occasionally tried calling my home. I didn't answer. The last time I answered an email from him was 2007. He reached out again in 2009 with, "How are you?" and a flower/kiss emoji. I didn't respond. Now, after 12 years of not hearing from him, he's been relentless in trying to reach me over the last several days. He's emailed me, sent social media message requests, filled out a form on my professional website, called and texted my business line, and Googled my part-time job and left me a voicemail there. I'm typically direct with people, but it feels complicated because I don't want to hurt him or frankly anger him, knowing that he has angry and obsessive tendencies. Since I haven't ever actually told him to stop, I don't know if I'm protected under stalking laws. I just worry that reaching out will encourage him to persist in trying to contact me, and I worry what will happen when he runs out of phone numbers and emails to try. What should I do?
Well, I have a number of thoughts, but one of the quick things that I think I want to say is I'm not a lawyer, you should speak to the lawyer if that's a real concern, but you are absolutely not, you can't expect the law to protect you in a way you have not tried to protect yourself. So in other words, if you feel literally incapacitated in saying no to him, then I don't think you can expect the law to, but I think you can say no to him. I think you can give him a very clear message. I think you can say to him, Steve, you make me feel uncomfortable when you do this. I don't want to hear from you anymore. I wish you well.
Yeah, again, I would encourage you to look up specific networks to support people who are trying to figure out whether they're being stalked, whether someone's about to escalate into stalking, what qualifies as stalking versus light harass. Sorry, I don't mean to put it on a gradation, but for somebody in that position of am I being stalked? Is it about to escalate? Is it about to taper off? How seriously should I consider this? Yeah, generally speaking, it's not encouraged to interact with somebody who's stalking you, with the exception of if you haven't yet told someone this is unwelcome directly. Yeah, and so to that end, I think that would be worth considering. Again, you don't have to do that if you believe that would set him off in a way that you could not protect yourself from. But I think something as simple as, I don't want to hear from you again, please stop. Don't apologize. Don't try to say something kind of nice, because I think he will interpret that as, oh, she kind of does want to hear from me. She's kind of torn. I should try again. So something very short, very direct.
Yeah. But I know that you were saying, Danny, that you don't think this person's obligated to do this. I'm sure that's legally true. But I think you should do that. I actually think it's a good idea. Mm-hmm. In general, I think people deserve to be told no. Yeah. I think it's a helpful thing that we as a culture need to get better at.
Yeah. And I can understand.
And it can be scary, right? Yeah. It can be really scary to say no to someone when they have a history of acting with volatility. But I do still think that that's an important step to go on.
It's worth considering seriously, I think. That's not to say you have to go do that tomorrow. But I do think that in addition to looking up specific, you can look up the stalking laws in your state. You can find out under what circumstances you might be able to get a restraining order, or whether or not they would require you to have said no directly once. So that is something that you can learn more about, and I would encourage you to do that. I would also encourage you to, if you can, mention it to any colleagues who you think he might also try to contact. You don't have to go into a lot of detail. You can just say, there's a former student who occasionally tries to, send me a lot of messages. Yeah. I hope you don't hear from them. If you do, please don't pass along any information. Just let me know, and don't give them any information.
Right, yeah.
Either tell him not to contact you again or say nothing.
Yeah.
And do the same for your friends too, because it will also, I think, go a long way towards helping you feel like you do have support, short of it's just me on my own here, or I call the cops. And then, yeah.
If you're concerned about your online security, there are various audits that you can do, and I would recommend doing that because you would never otherwise be sure what information about you might be publicly available to someone who was tenacious enough to look for it. I've had trouble with stalkers in the last year, and I've had to be pretty careful with some of this stuff.
Yeah, I'll end by just focusing on some of the emotional stuff in here, because I am not an expert on dealing with a stalker. I want you to try to seek out networks and organizations that specifically advocate for victims of stalking, because they will be able to direct you better than I can. But I think the tenor of this letter to me reads something like, because I've only ever either been polite or non-committal, maybe it's sort of my fault that he keeps going, and that's not what I think either of us mean when we say we think it'll be good for you to say no once.
Absolutely,
you've been clear, you've been professional, distant, clear. You have not sought out, romantic or emotionally intimate contact from him. You have not gone out of your way to get in touch with him. You have done nothing to encourage this. So if that's part of you feeling like, wow, because I missed my opportunity in 2009 or 2012, this is really on me. It's not. It's just not. You have not invited this contact, and I'm sorry that you're going through that.
He's so good at this. You're so good at that. That was really well put.
I think I don't want.
I didn't see that coming down the pike, but he was right.
Yeah.
You should say no, but not because you've done anything wrong, just because I think it will be helpful.
I think oftentimes with people where somebody's been violating a boundary for a long time, especially if it's in a really intermittent or sometimes low stakes way, eventually the fact that it's been going on so long can make the person who's being victimized or harassed feel like, I'll look foolish. If somebody else saw this, they would say, why didn't you stop it sooner? And that means I can't say anything now.
And
so,
it's a little bit like calling the old friend.
Mm-hmm. Something like letting the perfect be the enemy of the good.
Yeah.
Something like, if I didn't do it before, I don't deserve to protect myself now or defend myself now. I get it. I have felt that way myself in plenty of different moments in my life. Don't let that hold you back. Don't let that convince yourself that you just have to soldier through this one alone because you brought it on yourself. You didn't.
Yeah.
It's not appropriate. I do understand the fear of angering him because you're worried he might escalate. So again, I would say before you decide to say any direct no, read up on the laws, seek out the stalking support networks, find out what else you can do to protect yourself.
And get the online audit.
Get the online audit. Figure out different ways that you can, you want to both be aware if he's escalating his contact with you so that you can document it in case you do someday need a restraining order. And I say all that knowing restraining orders are not always as helpful as people want them to be. So I don't want to pretend that that's going to be the thing that fixes everything. But it will be useful information to have. But you also don't want to see everything as it comes in. So you want to have some combination of a buffer so you're not constantly like worried, is the next ping him? But you want to make sure that you also can access it as needed. So you're not like, oh, wow, he was ramping up his rhetoric and I didn't know because I wasn't ever paying attention. And maybe to that end, last thing, if you have a friend that you trust and who you think would be helpful to you, you might, for example, set all of his emails to be filtered into a certain inbox that doesn't go into your regular inbox, and then have a friend check it for you every couple of months and just let you know either nothing beyond what he's done in the past, or there's an escalation that I need to tell you about. And that might be helpful too, because then you know that somebody else is looking out for you and you don't necessarily have to go diving into it.
That's super helpful. That's also, as you know, what I've done.
I have. You have done that for me, and you have had other people do that for you, and it's been really helpful.
Yeah. It's not fun though. It's
no.
Definitely not fun being an object of other people's projection.
No, it is not. I don't care.
Especially when all you've done is be kind.
I know. I personally have never done anything but kind.
Well, I've been plenty of things other than kind.
Yeah. But in that event,
But I don't think it has much to do with why I have stalkers.
Okay. We're moving on to a dog question, which is great because Gogo's just fallen asleep. The subject is replacement puppy. Dear Prudence, To be blunt, my sister got a puppy as a test case for her maternal instincts. By the way, this letter remains blunt. It's just
To be blunt.
It's just blunt all the way through, which
To be blunt.
I appreciate the heads up. He was a large dog, and when she got pregnant, she was too tired to walk him and too afraid he might hurt the baby.
Wait, the scare quotes are in the letter.
The scare quotes are in the letter. Hurt was in scare quotes. Okay. She had him for a month before getting rid of him. He's a bully breed and at risk of being put down. I did my research, figured out a routine that would be good for him, and took him in myself. I spent a lot of time and energy training him, and he's a lovely, loving dog. My sister had an early stillbirth a month ago. She was 7 months along. As the lockdown lifted, my family visited each other for the first time in what felt like forever. My brother-in-law and sister were there, and she had a very public meltdown when I came with my dog and wouldn't let her take him away. She started screaming that I had stolen her puppy and he loved her first. It was obviously a reaction to her stillbirth, but everyone else just expected me to give up my dog. He was off leash and I gave the come here whistle command. I put my dog in my car and drove home, thinking I had made the more prudent move. I can understand and forgive my sister breaking down like that, but not my extended family for acting like I was a bitch for not giving up my dog. The stillbirth was a tragedy I will never know the depths of, but that doesn't entitle her to my dog. She threw the dog away like he was a toy. I'm sorry about the loss, but I'm not giving him up to be abused again. We were never close. I still love her, but my baby died is not an excuse. My dog is not going to fix anything any more than he did when she first got him. I love my dog. I love my family. I love my sister. Why are they asking this of me?
Wow.
Woo!
This one feels like a test for Solomon.
Yeah. This one is
hard.
You know, in a lot of ways, the letter writer here is in the right.
Yeah.
But boy, is it hard to, it's like they went about being mostly right in as wrong a way as possible at almost every opportunity.
Yeah.
I guess I'll just start with letter writer. There's a lot of rage in this letter. And I can imagine it's been an intense year for you and your whole family. I can imagine that experiencing your sister's kind of surprise meltdown was really jarring. And I also understand why it felt painful that everyone else in the family was just like, she just had a stillbirth and she's crying, give her what she wants. I can understand why you felt hurt and isolated, but there's just a lot of like, I get it, her baby died, I'll never get it, in a way that feels a little like you kind of want to rush past that. And I guess what I want to do is encourage this letter writer to say, you don't have to give her the dog. I think the dog is probably best off with you. I think that makes a lot of sense, but I want you to be able to articulate and defend that position with a little bit more restraint and a little bit less like, if you're going to melt down, I'll melt down right back at you. So I hope that feels possible. One thing that seems really like an obvious question here is you say, you took the dog in. It's not clear if you two had any conversation about how long this was going to be for. If she's, I feel like you would have mentioned that if you said, we were both very clear that this move was going to be permanent. So the fact that that's not here makes me think perhaps you both avoided that conversation because you were both uncomfortable.
Yeah.
I think people can get really intense about rehoming a dog and really, really like black and white moralizing about it. And so I think it's possible she might have felt like, I need to think of this as temporary because if I think of myself as getting a dog, realizing it wasn't working out, and then letting him live somewhere else, that's the language that you use. She threw the dog away like a toy and she abused him. And I'm just like, I don't see that in this letter. I don't see any abuse. It sounds like
neglect, maybe.
Yeah, maybe neglect. She was too tired to walk him. I don't know if her partner walked him. I don't know if they have a big backyard. To me, it's like it wasn't a good fit and it wouldn't have worked out long term. But I don't see anything in there that's like, wow, the dog was in dire straits.
Yeah.
And she gave the dog to her sibling, who it sounds like was incredibly excited to take him on and to train him and spend great time with him. So
That was a good decision she made with the dog.
yeah, you might not have liked it. You might not have done the same thing in her position. You might resent that she was prioritizing her pregnancy in a way that you might not have done in her situation. But you can still say, like, this is my dog. He's better off with me. This was something that we mutually agreed on. I'm so sorry that you're hurting, but this dog is better off with me, and I'm going to keep him without resorting to, you abused him, you threw him away, you treated him like trash. You don't need to overstate your case by making your sister seem worse than she is.
Yeah. I've only a couple of thoughts to add to that. I think that's right. One, as Danny says, you definitely get to keep the dog. You've trained the dog, you've bonded with the dog. The dog is your dog, and you are the dog's human, and that's how it can be. I would consider trying to formalize some arrangement of sharing access to the dog with your sister, a weekly visit, a weekly overnight, something along those lines. Not for any other reason than compassion, I think. I think that would be a good idea. I think it's possible. I think it's achievable.
Yeah, I think right now, and again, I understand it must have been really upsetting to feel like everyone in your family was standing around saying, just give her the dog. But I want you to be able to, stand on your position here without feeling like you have to lash out.
Yes.
So if everyone's bombarding you with messages, or if people are trying to like manipulate you or guilt you into giving her back the dog, absolutely cut that conversation off. Absolutely, if your sister says you have to give me back the dog, you don't have to. But wherever you can, try to say like, this is not productive. I'm not going to continue this conversation, rather than you're using the death of your baby as an excuse, because that is just going to torpedo your relationship. And again, I think part of the reason that you're ramping yourself up here is because part of you feels like that's the only way I'll be safe. That's the only way I'll get to keep my dog. I love my sister, but not that much. So if she pushes me on this front again, I'm going to say something I know she'll never be able to forgive me for, because then at least I'll have my dog and I'll have peace. And I think there are better ways for you to hold that ground without going to, you're melting down. I know your baby died and it's sad, but you're using it as an excuse. Like, that's just, you don't need to go there. You just don't need to go there to point out reality, which is that the dog is yours. You two maybe missed an opportunity to clarify that earlier, but it's done. The dog is yours, and it's better off with you.
The only other thing I think I would want to say is that, when in a large family with multiple siblings, when someone becomes pregnant, they often monopolize a lot of the conversation and the attention in the family.
Yeah.
And that can be difficult too.
Yeah.
Especially since sometimes that will, lead to the relative neglect of people whose lives don't lead to marriage and children. And so I think that might be part of what's happening here too, is, she was already having a baby. I'm sorry it didn't work out, but that was like, that you were all happy about that.
Yeah.
Let me have this one thing.
Right. The dog wasn't important to her when there was a baby coming.
Yeah.
And now that there's not one, it doesn't matter that I've trained the dog. It doesn't matter that
Yeah.
Mom did. And I really do. I understand that. And again, you don't have to compare that to your sister's pain about her stillbirth. They can be their own separate things. I just think that makes sense. That matters. I understand why you feel beset. I really, really get that. So the reason I'm encouraging you to exercise restraint here is not because I think your feelings are coming out of nowhere, or that you're just contemplating whimsical cruelty, but just because I think that you will be able to find other better ways to express your boundaries, your limits, your resentments, your frustrations than going to that well. Good luck. Keep your dog. It's your dog.
Yeah, it's your dog.
It's your dog. Absolutely. Okay. The next subject. I get a letter like this a lot. Emotionally distant husband.
Okay.
Dear Prudence, my husband is generally kind and loving. As I am our 2- and 3-year-old's primary caregiver, he has done the bulk of supporting our family financially. However, he has a coworker he has become extremely close to during the pandemic. He texts her constantly, speaks to her on the phone after I've gone to bed, and frequently brings her up in conversation. He assures me that she is his friend, just someone he connects with, and that he needs the social interaction and adult conversation. My sister thinks I should be tolerant because they're not having sex, and he's not being secretive, which shows that the relationship must be above board. He works from home, so opportunities for them to meet are scarce. He may not be unfaithful, but he is openly smitten with her. He's not hiding her, that's true, but he doesn't let me touch his phone, even to charge it or tidy up. He mentions her name to our kids, and they ask me who she is. I feel like I'm taking care of our kids, watching our marriage disappear. I feel invisible, and because no one else sees this as a problem, crazy. What should I do?
Ooh.
Where do we start?
I've started the last few. You start with as well.
Yeah, I mean, I guess you could start with, if your kids say, "Mommy, who's this lady?" You can say, "Ask your dad."
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah, that sounds good.
Yeah, you don't have to say that in like a pointed way, or like, "Ask your father who she is," and then all will be revealed. But just, don't take on that extra work. Just say, "Ask your dad who she is." Yeah, that's not your job. Gosh, it's great that he's generally kind and loving. It's fine that he wants to connect with people or have social interaction or adult conversation. None of those are bad. I think the conversation you're trying to have with your husband is not, are you, husband, entitled to adult conversations, so much as, can we have a conversation about this new relationship that goes beyond simply whether or not you're allowed to have it?
Yeah.
This isn't just like, either we decide that you're doing something below board, in which case, bad, you cheated on me, not allowed, or it's technically above board, in which case I'm not entitled to ask you questions or share my feelings and expect you to listen. It's either okay or it's not. Half your age plus 7. Like, again, that kind of rule of like, is it allowed or is it not allowed?
And it's very clear as well that, he's not thinking in terms of clearly delineated boundaries. Otherwise, he wouldn't be acting obsessively when you try to charge his phone. That's, a fetish.
Mm-hmm.
It's a fetish object. It's an object of obsessive attention.
Do you think it's maybe working both ways though? Like, I don't think you or I ever try to charge each other's phone.
Yeah, I don't think so. But I mean, what it means is that the phone has become a site of a certain kind of obsessive contact.
Exactly, yeah. For both of them, it's like, if I could see the phone, I would know you. And for him, it's like, you can't see the phone because I have to have something to play. So sorry, Grace. This is just what it's like a year into the pandemic. I'm dressed like a fisherman. Grace's allergies are acting up. We're all doing our best. This guy is texting his coworker all day, but he's allowed to. We're doing our best. That sentence about, since I'm the kid's primary caregiver, he takes on the bulk of supporting our family financially. That's not an uncommon arrangement. I don't want to say that that's your real problem here or the only problem. I do just want to point out, it's not like by supporting the family financially, he gets to kind of buy his way out of emotional intimacy with you. Or like, that means the caregiving is all you all the time because he makes the money. Like, if part of the dynamic, especially because he knows her from work, is a little bit like, don't ask me about my business, Kay. I bring in the money and you don't ask me about it, and that's the arrangement. Like, you're not Michael and Kay Corleone in The Godfather. You are allowed to ask about his work. You are allowed to have feelings and questions and requests and demands about the burden of shared care in your home. And if, part of the tension here is clearly like, the kids ask me questions about their dad. So something else that seems to be going on here is the sense of like, not only am I the kid's primary mediator or primary caregiver, I also mediate their relationship with their dad.
Yeah.
So I'm doing a couple of different things on his behalf, and he's sort of just saying like, I bring in the money, my work here is done. And so I think part of what needs to get talked about here is this sense of, I'm not here because I want you to stop having friends. I don't want to have an argument with you about whether or not you're entitled to have social interactions. Of course you are. What I want to discuss is this new and intense and emotionally intimate friendship that's become a real source of tension between the two of us. And I want to talk about it in a way that's not just, is it allowed or not? Because when you get defensive, I don't know what's going on with you. I don't feel like you get to listen to me. I don't get to listen to you. So I'm wondering if we can take off the table this fear of either I can forbid you or not forbid you from having a close friendship with a colleague. And what I would like instead is to talk a little bit about, what are you feeling?
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. This is one of those things where, one of my first responses is to say, well, monogamy doesn't work because it produces secrecy and people don't have good vocabulary for talking about their projections and their obsessions. But the fact of the matter is that you can have those conversations while remaining totally monogamous, and you have to have the conversations either way.
Yeah, and here I think the problem is so much more husbands rather than just monogamy, because the issue is not like we don't sleep with other people. The issue here is he has this kind of attitude, which is stuff in the home is your job. Everything outside it is mine. If something happens inside the home with the outside world, like if I'm texting somebody, that's not, you don't have the remit, you have no jurisdiction here. And I, without saying that I'm sure he is otherwise kind and loving, I think there's some contempt for you in that.
Yeah.
And so I don't fault certainly monogamy and ideas about monogamy, especially the idea that you will never, if you truly love your partner, experience any kind of crush or attraction or thrill from another person. But I don't see that as being the problem here. I see the problem here being his inability to be honest with you, his inability to be honest with himself, his contempt for the work you do with the children. And again, he might very well love you and sometimes feel that contempt, and he might not be aware of that contempt himself.
Yeah.
But if your 2 and 3-year-old are saying, Mom, who's Dad's friend? That means they've kind of picked up on something about their dad, which is like, Dad exists in the next room, and Mom can talk to him like the Virgin Mary could talk to God, on the behalf of sinners.
Yeah.
And that says something about their dad's relationship with them.
To be clear, my claim was not that the fantasy of monogamy as an exhaustion of affect or affection or interest was to blame. It's more just the way that monogamous couples very often aren't very good at talking about feelings of intensity they have about third parties.
Right. Because if you admit it, then that means I don't love you anymore.
Exactly.
Our marriage is a sham. I want to have an affair or leave you for them. And one of the things here is, do you imagine, like, what is it like if we have a conversation where my husband possibly said something like, you're right, I have a crush on her and I don't really know how to deal with it.
Yeah.
Is there anything we could do with that information besides, you don't really love me, let's call the whole thing off, let's split custody of the kids? And so at that stage, you might also want to be talking with your other friends, possibly with a counselor. But whatever you're able to do next, it's not going to come from you prying and him denying. It's got to come from some sort of shared common ground of like, I'm not trying to figure out whether or not you're really sleeping with her. I want to talk to you honestly about what's obvious to both of us.
Yeah.
You're kind of smitten with this woman, and I want to know, where's that sitting for you? Is it like I'm smitten and I feel kind of guilty but also defensive because I haven't technically done anything wrong? Is it I'm smitten and I'm thinking about leaving you and I don't want to admit that? Where are we on that front? And that's not a conversation that he's going to necessarily come to champing at the bit to get honest, but I think that's the best way to approach this. But yeah, I feel like I'm taking care of our kids, watching my marriage disappear. I feel invisible. I feel crazy. That's not good. It's time to start sharing that. If your husband's totally unwilling to have that conversation, you start sharing with other people. Your friends, maybe relatives that you trust, somebody in your life who can help support you so that you have something. And good luck. I'm sorry. The subject of our next letter is stay closeted or not. Dear Prudence, I'm a senior in high school. I've known I'm a lesbian since I was 14, and I've also known that my whole family is extremely homophobic. My parents say ew when a gay couple appears on TV. They say that homosexual people are unnatural and going to hell, and I once heard my dad say to a friend that if any of his kids ever came out, he would kick them out and never speak to them again. I specifically looked for LGBT-friendly colleges and worked very hard to get good grades in high school. I was able to get a full ride to a college a few hours away in a very liberal and LGBT-friendly community. My parents are ecstatic since they couldn't really afford to contribute more than a few $1,000s a year. Anyway, I know that I can't keep up this secret for much longer, and I'm excited to finally be in a community where all of me is accepted, as well as finally being able to date. Even though the college is a few hours away, I am terrified that my parents will find out. They've already said they will be visiting me on campus, and I wouldn't be surprised if they showed up unannounced. There would be so many different ways for them to find out, especially since my parents are usually pretty nosy. I know they wouldn't let me back home during holiday breaks and summer vacation, and they would no longer pay for things like my phone and health insurance. Should I take the risk and come out anyways, or let my friends know I'm not out to my family and ask them not to speak of it if my family's ever around? It's a testament.
Solidarity, sister. This is so hard.
Yeah, and it's a testament to how many of these letters that I get, or how often I think about this problem. That my first thought was like, oh, that's fantastic. The most they could take away is your health insurance and your phone, as opposed to make you homeless and not able to pay for school.
Yeah.
That's not good, to be clear. That's not like, what a great silver lining. Yeah. That's awful, and I'm so sorry. It is, I'm really glad you got a full ride to school. I'm really, really glad to hear about that. I think the first place to take this will be, whatever your campus's version of like the Office of Student Life is, or if you have an on-campus LGBT center.
They probably will.
I assume based on your description of the college, there will be one, and you will not be the only student with this problem. Yeah. And so they will also have resources to help you figure out, are there low-cost phone plans that you can get as a college student so that you can start preparing to pay for that yourself in that event. I mean, I think what you should do is wait as long as you can throughout college, not because I think that that's going to be easy, but because it will give you more time to start saving up money to pay for your own phone and to arrange for other places to stay during winter vacation, summer vacation, so that either when they do find out, because you can't perfectly control for anything, even if you swear all your friends to secrecy, there's still a chance that your family will find out somehow. You say that they kind of tend to pry. They might fucking go through your phone, They might be reading your emails. And so you should get ready. You should get ready, and you should seek out support on campus. You can ask for that help confidentially, and you can, that's going to be the best thing to do. Once you have as much of the financial and logistical things squared away, I think for your own peace of mind, you should come out. Just because as long as you don't, you can keep playing it over and over in your head about how it might go, or look for clues that there may be softening, or, freak out if they drop a hint that they're not softening. And that can just be so, so, so exhausting.
Yeah.
I delayed a couple of different coming outs. And, I understand why I was waiting for various things in various times, but boy, even the bad reactions in a lot of ways were better because it was all out in the open. But at that point, I was old enough that I was supporting myself, so that's a really...
Yeah, my instinct is different. My instinct is batten down the hatches. You can't control for it perfectly, but these people have not demonstrated, they have not earned that disclosure from you. Mm-hmm. They haven't demonstrated fitness or willingness or preparedness to hear that disclosure from you. Mm-hmm. Our parents do not deserve to know things about the way that we live in the world just by virtue of having raised us. And when they say despicable and hateful things of that order, I wouldn't tell them.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't share that information with them. But we also come from different places, yeah.
No, and that's funny because I thought that's what I was saying. I thought my answer was batten down the hatches and then senior year, go for it.
Yeah. I would never tell them.
Yeah.
I would just cut them off. I mean, this is what I'm saying. It's you may just have to live without your family. Plenty of queer people do. Plenty of queer people are in this situation. And it's scary, but very often family is not a place that we can go back to.
Yeah.
I mean, I hope that's not the case for you. I hope that the good parts of your relationship with your family can be salvaged, but the work that has to be done is theirs, not yours.
Yeah.
You don't have to persuade them that being gay is okay. You can't persuade them of that.
And there's nothing in this letter that, I don't want to read too far into what the letter writer may or may not feel, but there's nothing in it that's I really love my family.
No, sure.
Aside from this, we're really close. And
Cut that shit out.
Yeah. Yeah, certainly if there's a part of you, the only reason that I would encourage you to come out is if you felt like it was going to be inevitable anyways, and this way you could at least control for when the blow up happened. If it's simply a question of like, oh, I think that they deserve to know or they should know, or somehow living inauthentically if I don't tell them. No, they've made it very clear that they would just try to hurt you if you came out. They don't want your authenticity. They would like you to stay in the closet. Parents say that when they suspect one of their kids is gay.
I had that thought too.
I mean, the reason that parents say that is because they've got at least one of the kids in mind and they hope the kid overhears it, or they say it in front of the kid, and they say it because they think you're gay.
Yeah.
And that's the way to say it without actually making anybody come out. Parents say that on purpose. They know exactly what they're doing. It's not an accident. It's not like, oh, if only he knew he was talking about me. He knows he's talking about you. He's talking to you. It's on purpose. Before I came out for the last time, I was really sad. I was spending time with my sister. I had this thought in my head that was just like, I'm going to lose my family. And, it took a little while. And there was that sort of like, oh, I can't believe that you thought that. And she's like, I absolutely lost them. I lost them in one of the most painful ways imaginable. I lost not only them, but any good memory I had ever had of them. I lost all respect for them. I lost any shred of affection I'd ever had for them. That's all gone. And that was really sad and really awful.
I sort of regained my family, which is very odd.
And it's also, my life is better. My life is better without them. My life gets better the longer my life goes on without them. I couldn't feel that at the time, and that's not a promise. That's not to say, like, if you lose your family, great things will happen. Just if you're able to make it so that the financial hit's not too bad. I think sometimes we spend so much time being like, oh no, family rejection, that's the worst thing that can ever happen, without downplaying the pain or the seriousness of it. Sometimes it's also incredibly freeing. I'm really glad that soon you're going to be able to live somewhere where you don't have to constantly monitor yourself to make sure that nobody realizes that you're gay.
And the thing is, these people are not your friends.
Yeah.
They are not your friends.
Yeah. Fuck them. Have a great time at school. Stay safe. Let's see. There is a question that has come in. At the end of every podcast, there's a request for a phone call or voicemail. But in all the episodes I've listened to, there's never been a listener call. Is that because no one does that, or the calls aren't short enough?
I've wondered this. Why is that?
That's fantastic. I can tell you. I can tell you exactly why. I don't know the phone number. I don't know what it is. I don't check the inbox. Somebody does, but I don't know who it is. Every year or so, Phil is the producer of the podcast, will say, oh, someone has passed along this one voicemail to me, and I've put it in the Google Doc, which means about one episode a year, there's one voicemail. And it's usually pretty exciting. I'm like, oh,
I think I did hear one once.
Yeah, they're very rare. They're limited edition Easter eggs. And I'm always like, a voicemail, this is so neat. But I don't know who checks it. It's not me. And now I'm a little worried that there is a voice mailbox somewhere just full of problems that I've never, ever answered. So
I'm worried about that too. You should find out and check it.
Yeah.
And if necessary, do a special one of these.
Oh God, where I just do backlogs of voicemails? Yeah, the answer to that question is I never knew who monitored the inbox when I
never checked my voicemail either.
Well, and I got the job a while ago. There was a lot of stuff to remember. I had to write it all down, and I don't remember anything about the voicemail.
That's the worst excuse ever. And you're a good excuse maker. That was not good.
No, it wasn't very good. I don't have a good excuse. I don't know.
I got the job a while ago, and there was a lot to write down.
There was a lot to write down, Grace. You got to do There's so many other things to write down.
Do you not say the thing when you read it out, though? The number?
Oh no, I only read it out one time, and then just keep using that one.
But you listen to the podcast.
I always fast forward that part. I'm confessing too many things. Please leave me voicemails. I'm sorry. I'll start listening. I don't know. Maybe nobody calls. Maybe the inbox is empty. Maybe the inbox has been empty this whole time and nobody calls because they listen to the show and they know
you're losing your job tonight.
This is it. I had an okay run.
Next week's Dear Prudence, Jesse single.
Sassy.
Yeah.
Too sassy.
That's right.
Too sassy.
Okay. It won't be Jesse single. He takes your job. Who will it be?
Let's read our last letter before Grace speculates any further as to who's going to get my job. Nobody. Oh, this one makes me sad. It's another husband who drives me nuts.
Is it
All
another
right.
husband who's a loving, caring man?
No, actually, this one wasn't even that. It was just like my husband's an asshole to me, and he's mean, and I don't like him.
Okay.
So leave him. If you wrote a letter to me recently about how your husband's really mean and always wants to debate you, you should leave him. I don't like him. He doesn't like you.
Are we not reading it out?
That's it. I'm too
You're
I'm too
agitated.
despondent, and
Yeah.
we're also very close to 9 o'clock.
Okay.
But if anyone else would like to know anything else that I don't do that I
Leave
should,
your husband tonight, friends.
leave your husband tonight. Stop checking your voicemail. If it's important, they'll email you. Has always been my sense of listening to things. If it's important, they'll try again. Is usually how I approach
Right,
the
but
world.
they keep trying the same way.
Well, then
Maybe there's just one person on the voicemail who's left the
God,
same
oh
message,
God,
and it's got progressively worse
Uh,
over the course of the last
oh my goodness.
how many years? 5 years.
Well, I'm riddled with guilt.
5 years, and they're
I'm-
just like, no, he's still a loving man. He's still careful. He lost his job, but I think that's fine. It's not his fault.
If anyone watching right now works at Slate and happens to know the password to the Dear Prudence voicemail box, I'd be very grateful. I'm not great about responding to voicemails, but if you wanted to send me a message on Slack, I promise I'll check. And let's say goodnight to Go-Go, because I think that will make people feel better about me.
I love you, Danny. You're really good at your job. Everyone knows it. You're lovely.
Thank you, Grace. I'm sorry about the voicemails. But here's a very small dog to look at. And you should know that he's a little potato.
I'm sorry I had allergies, everyone.
I'm glad that you showed up and that we're all still alive, and that this very, very small dog is going to be hanging out with us tonight.
I love it.
Thank you for sharing your problems. Thank you for watching, and sorry again if you've been sending any voicemails. Thanks, everybody.